Hi everyone, it's Cookie Lou in Arizona. I'm here again today with a request. Someone would like me to read another excerpt from my book, Family of Pearls. I don't want to read too much of it because there are certain people that want to obtain the book and read it, and I don't want to spoil the story for them, but I did pick a lighthearted story in the end of the book that I wrote about my aunt and my uncle, my father's brother Willie, Uncle Willie and Aunt Millie. Her name was Carmelina, but we always call them Uncle Willie and Aunt Millie, Willie and Millie. But anyway, I referred to her as Carmelina in the story. And it was a while after my father had passed away, and I had put his house up for sale that I had been living in. And I was about to get ready to move into the home I purchased in Boynton Beach, Florida, which was south. This was west coast, and I was going to the east coast to live. So I made it. Took some time to go and see my Uncle Willie and Aunt Carmelina before I left. And this is a little story about that visit. And the chapter is titled "Those Silly Weird Fish That Fly." My last memory of them together in their typical setting was on a warm, clear day when I drove around the corner from my father's house to see them at theirs. My father had been gone for 14 months. I had been living in his house, my house, for almost a year and had just put it up for sale. I was preparing to move into my new home on the east coast of Florida. I wanted to stop in and see my aunt and uncle before I left and give them a final hug and kiss goodbye. I rang the doorbell several times, but no one answered. I knew that they were home because the garage door was up 2 feet so the air can circulate. If they were not at home, it would have been closed completely. I walked around the side of the house. Charlie, my little dog Charlie, was close to my heels. "Come on, Pork Chops," I said. "Let's go find Uncle Willie." Pork Chops is what Uncle Willie called him. Charlie loved to go to Uncle Willie's house and run by the canal. He liked to bark at the bugs and bees flying past him, and he chased the squirrels that he found there right up the tree. Watching Charlie run and spin and pivot in rapid circles with happiness is a joyful thing. I named this activity Charlie's Happy Dance. He is a happy dog. He was very, very much loved, and it shows. Everyone who sees my Charlie boy wants a dog just like him. The fresh smell of clean laundry was in the air, and the clothes on the line were swaying in the warm breeze of the day. I continued towards the back of the house and saw Uncle Willie tending to his garden. He was scratching at the earth with a rake. Aunt Carmelina was farther back by the canal. She was sitting on the wooden chair under the mulberry tree, reading a book. She often read there in the shade of the mulberry. The day was serene as I called out to them, but they didn't hear me. I knew Aunt Carmelina probably turned off her hearing aids, which she usually did when she was reading. As I stood there watching this picturesque scene, Uncle Willie bent down to pull out some weeds that he had loosened up, and the egrets were standing on the bank, and those silly, weird fish that fly were skipping across the surface of the canal as if they were on a mission to some unknown destination. They seemed to have a purpose in mind as they jumped out of the water and skipped high over the surface several times before plopping down under the water again. I watched them methodically jumping and skipping and plopping, making their way along the canal systematically, one after another. There goes another one, and another, and another. Uncle Willie said they jumped out of the water to catch the bugs that fly over the canal. That made sense, but they were still the silliest and weirdest fish I've ever seen. The bananas had ripened on the 2 banana trees that arched over the dock, and citrus trees were well fruited. Uncle Willie's vegetables were thriving beautifully, as he and Aunt Carmelina were engrossed in doing what they did ever near to one another. I continued to observe them for a while, each in their own separate worlds, yet still together in one. Is this what life is all about, I wondered? Doing whatever it is we do, living in a house here and then there, and then another somewhere else, raising a family and working a business, earning money, spending money, saving money, and somewhere in the middle of it all, taking vacations in the mountains, sharing holidays and Sunday suppers with family, and going through years and years and years of living life while loving and fighting and laughing and crying and putting loved ones to rest at St. Charles. I watched this aunt and uncle of mine whom I had seen only on Sundays while visiting with my father, and for a few weeks during the summer. At their home in the Catskill Mountains, which I really loved to go to that home. It was such a joyful time for me to go to the Catskill Mountains and stay there for a month or so and run in the fields and play in the brook. I loved it there. I felt that I knew them well. This past 15 months that I had spent living around the corner from them had brought us closer together. At least I felt that we had come to know each other better. While we went through the season of my father dying and leaving us, 3 people sharing the experience of someone close to them ending his existence is not a small thing, at least not to me. I watched this couple living out their final days in this house by the canal, arriving at the finish line together just as they had begun their journey together. Their picture was almost complete as the 2 of them serenely continued on this patch of land in the sun, one weeding a garden, and the other quietly reading a book as the breeze caressed the laundry swaying on the line, and those silly weird fish that fly were jumping and skipping their way to somewhere. Or maybe their jumping and skipping was just to catch a bug. I called out to Uncle Willie and Carmelina again, louder this time. "Hello there," I said. Uncle Willie looked up, his pure white hair hanging down into his crystal blue eyes. Aunt Carmelina closed her book and squinted in my direction. He gave me a wave, and she stood up to greet me as the warm breezes blew, and the sunlight reflected its warmth through the thick branches of the mulberry. At the end of each chapter in the book, I write a paragraph that summarizes everything that was written in that chapter. And it all relates around the season of something. So this, I wrote this as, this is the season of full circle living, of 2 people blending into one, choosing to stay together regardless of what life brought them on their journey to the finish line. 2 people who companioned each other with love and value as they worked hard to watch their family grow and prosper, enduring life bonded together as they lived and then died in reach of familiar arms. And I have a picture at the bottom of the page of my father, my Aunt Millie in the middle, and Uncle Willie. They're standing actually at the canal in the back of Uncle Willie's house. And this is a picture. Uncle Willie is the one on the with the paunchy stomach. This is Uncle Willie. He had the beautiful white hair and crystal blue eyes, and Carmelina's in the middle, and my dad is the taller one on the left. And it's Uncle Willie, Father Ted, and Aunt Carmelina. 3 musketeers. My father relied on these people a great deal. They really helped him get through life. Every aspect of life, they helped him through. And when my father passed away, it was February, and I was in Florida, and my cousin Lucy told me that they had a snow blizzard a couple of days before I was to arrive, and it was a mess, and she told me it was cold. They had to bring a coat, and I didn't have a coat, so I had to go buy a coat. Well, needless to say, when I did get there, the snow was pretty much dissipated. It was kind of like warm humidity that took over and melted the snow, and I didn't really need the coat very much, but I had it with me. But anyway, this is a story about that time when I had to go there for the burial, and and some things that, emotions that were put to rest at this point in time when I buried my father in New York. But I opened the chapter with this description of how I feel about the season of winter. I've always felt close to nature. I love, nature, everything that God has created in this world, the forest, the ocean, the mountains, the sky, and the animals. And so I love the beauty of every season that I lived through when living in New York. Summer, winter, spring, and fall all had a beauty of its own, and I've always felt a very close attachment to that seasonal nature that I would live through, and I always felt that when I'm standing in nature, I'm standing with God. So I wrote a little bit about winter, and it's titled "When the Sun is Over the Tropic of Capricorn." It's just a small little paragraph. The winter solstice occurs when the sun is over the Tropic of Capricorn, at its greatest distance from the celestial equator. It is the shortest day of the year. Some winters are fierce, while others are soft, gentle, and quiet. I love the beauty that winter brings, when nature shares its coldest splendor, when the trees, buried in the fall, crystallize after an ice storm, and all the branches look as if they've been coated with glass, when everything is suspended in a beauty of its own, lying frozen under a vanilla gray sky, and icicles are stiffly hanging everywhere. Then at night, the street lights cast a soft glow over the snow, giving it a semblance of a shimmering carpet of diamond dust. The moon is ripe and full, and there are shades of something mysterious and absent of color that blended with the wind, creating shadows on the snow. As I walk through this white wonder, everything is so still, so quiet. The only sounds I hear are the muffled crunches under my shoes. I feel the eagerness of the child within me that wants to make her presence known by placing her mark in a serpentine line upon the snow before her with my feet. I'd like to oblige her, but I couldn't allow her to damage such untouched beauty with the disturbance of her identity. So standing still, I take pleasure in the tranquility of this silent moment. I relish in the peace that this silence brings me. Enjoying the beauty around me, I am wrapped in the warmth of God's coldest embrace, standing alone with nature at its fierce yet gentlest moment, standing alone in the silence with God. And then I continue to talk about the funeral and my experiences with that. So anyway, that's just a little bit more about my story. A few more little excerpts about Family of Pearls. So thank you for requesting more readings. I'm glad that you are eager to know more about the story. And there's a lot more stories in here, funny memories and funny stories and tragedies. There's a heart-wrenching tragedy in here as well that I cannot read without crying. So and there's just, like I said, it's a 3-generation narrative about my mother and my grandparents and myself and our lives as it's transcended. And my grandparents raising 8 children in poverty, and my mother living with a violent man, having the courage to leave him, when I was only 2 years old, and going back to her mother's house for sanctuary. And as my grandparents grew old and changes were made, and my aunts and uncles grew up and got married, had children, and then the old age of my grandparents and what happens there. I mean, it really evolves into a lot of stories, and there's also a world-renowned thing. One of my uncles is kind of like a well-known celebrity. And there's a little bit of something in there about him, which would be interesting and surprising when you find out about it. But I'm not going to tell you. You're going to have to read it. So needless to say, there's lots of stories in this book, and it's fun read. Anybody that wants to read the book, just let me know, and I'll send you a copy. So thank you for your interest in wanting to hear more, and thank you for listening, and everybody have a wonderful, well, it's, I guess, a wonderful tomorrow. It's quite late here, actually. It's almost 12 o'clock now. So have a great day tomorrow, and everybody eat healthy and live prosperously, and make sure that you do all the wonderful things for yourself that you need to do. Love you all. Bye-bye.